Walk downstairs, we'll hear just as good as you can.
Okay, everybody hear me back there? Great. I'm off to a really bad start this afternoon. The computer we're going to be working with has an older version of PowerPoint. And the PowerPoint version that I use is pretty up to date. So this will automatically change the style of the text. There's not much I can do about it, but we're going to be going through CloudCap in. We will go from the earliest days on up to modern slides, and we will be, the slides will be switching from old to new, and it's really an interesting building. It does have connections to Wasco County because there was no Hood River County when this building was built. It was built in 1889, and we'll discuss some of the issues of the year of 1889 when we get to it. So anybody have any relatives that were working at CloudCap? Has anybody ever been up there? All right. Anybody been on one of my tours? No. Okay. So let's get started here. I want to thank a few people first. U.S. Forest Service, which did not bring its own computer today. The Hood River Historical Society, they've given me a lot of information and photos on CloudCap. The Crag Rats, who operate it under special lease from the Forest Service. We'll talk a little bit about them later. Special thanks to Oregon Historical Society, the Zombies University of Oregon, Kate McCarthy, and the Crag Rats. You can see how much this has changed my fonts completely. So it's going to be a real challenge. This is going to be more visual than it is, visual and oral more than it is the fonts. Okay? Well, apparently you have it on there. Converted my Western fonts into this. Yeah. We'll bring you up to modern times real quick. Okay. This is going to be hard for me to read. All right. What that says, okay, the 1890 census. Keep in mind when this building was built out here in the west, we're still the Wild West. It was 1889. The frontier will not be considered closed for another year. We're still dealing with Indian issues. Wounded Knee won't happen until 1890. Oklahoma land rush is still a year away. Yet, these people were able to build a 4-star hotel at 6,000 feet on the northeast side of Mount Hood. Pretty good, huh? Okay, 1889. Prior to CloudCap, David Rose Cooper opened up a tent camp just below CloudCap at around 5,000 feet on Mount Hood. And he's going to lead people onto the mountain. This is 1888, and they had explored it up there as early as 1884, the Coopers. So this tent camp in itself, oh man, it's not going to let me overlap. The tent camp itself offered amenities like ice cream. This is at 5,000 feet, okay? They had cows up there, they had a dining tent, they had sleeping quarters for the guests, and cows to make cream. Their kids would go out and hunt elk, fish for local trout, so people that stayed up there did pretty well. But that didn't go unnoticed. The road and the rights were bought up and turned to the Mount Hood Stage Company. Now, Remember I said this is 1889, not too many people have vacations on their mind. Take a look at the wages people were making for a week, okay? Bobcat, when it first opened, was anywhere from $3 to $5 a night. That's about $125 in today's money. So do you think a baker or a blacksmith is going to take a week's wages that they have to spend for their family to go up there? I don't think so. It's not going to happen. So just keep in mind those wages. We'll be talking a little bit as we move on. That, anybody know who this gentleman is? That's William Meade Ladd. He plays an important role of opening up Portland. Okay, he's going to expand. It's going to be the Ladd Edition. His father's a banker. He's going to transfer the Ladd Bank over to him. They're going to have an iron smelter there. Anybody know what Lake Oswego was like before the big houses moved in? There's actually a smelter over there. Okay, so he's a very prominent businessman. He's a philanthropist. He gives money to the arts, YMCA, things like that. And that's his name, William B. Ladd, in some sort of font that I can't quite read. So he's one of the makers and shakers of Portland and the state of Oregon. Along with a business partner. Anybody recognize this fellow? He's kind of eccentric. He plays a part in our total American history. And I'll tell you why. That is Charles Erskine Scott Wood. He was born in 1852. He was 10 years old when he saw President Lincoln. When he grew up to be a young man, he was sent to West Point. He will meet President Grant. He will come out west via the Transcontinental Railroad to fight Indians. Okay, he's an Indian fighter. And anybody know what group is around here that tried to fight its way all the way to Canada before they were overtaken? Chief Joseph, that's Pierce. Well, young Lieutenant Wood was there at the signing of the peace treaty, and he embellished the speech where he said, "I will fight no more forever." Charles Wood and Chief Joseph will become lifelong friends. Their families still gather today, descendants. Okay? So, he's also going to be a lawyer. He's going to be a poet, author, businessman. He's really into women's suffrage, and he's also into womanizing. It will be his first wife, Nanny, who names Cloudcap in. But he will kind of diss Annie and move on to other things. He has friends like Margaret Sanger, Ansel Adams, John Steinbeck, Chief Joseph, among others. So he's kind of a Renaissance man. And along with Mr. Ladd, they will produce the historic Cloudcap Inn. There she is. That says it's at 7,000 feet. Cloudcap Inn rests at about 6,000 feet, but people like to embellish their postcards. Okay? So they're going to open this inn up, and I'm going to show you what it looks like today in approximately the same spot. There she is. Changed a little bit, got a little rowdy around the edges, but it's been preserved for posterity. Keep in mind, this is 1889. These people have flushing toilets, they have baths, good meals, all that good stuff in 1889 for the price of $5 a night, which is about $125. And how much did a baker make?
$5
Yeah, he's not going to be taking his family of 5 or 6 kids up there for a weekend. Okay? I'm going to stretch a little bit on what they were thinking. Mr. Ladd and Mr. Wood are prominent individuals. They have ties to back east. Personally, I think they're kind of competing with like the Vanderbilts and building big vacation spots for the affluent. So that's kind of a guess on my part, but it seems to be, I think it's a pretty good guess. It's established in 1889. William Whidden, anybody familiar with him? He's a famous architect. He's going to build the Exposition Center for Lewis and Clark in 1905 in Portland. Anybody ever been down to that forestry building before it burned down? Was it pretty nice? Prior to 1964, huge building, right? Yeah, well, he designed Cloud Cap. And down at the bottom, it cost $55,000 in their money. In today's money, that's over $1 million. So that came out of their own pockets, the building space. Construction begins in March of 1889. Anybody ever been up to Cloud Cap in March? It's kind of difficult, okay? But that year, there was no snow, so they were able to begin construction. Keep in mind, this is another connection to our past. It's not one we like to glorify because of the treatment of individuals. The road going up to Cloud Cap, the original wagon road, was done by the Chinese laborers that were hired. William Langell, the son of James Langell, the foreman up there, he's in that picture somewhere, but nobody's come to me yet to point it out, said in his papers that they herded the Chinese. Okay? So we're still dealing with things like Chinese Exclusion Acts in 1889. Okay? So we're still not as advanced society as we like to think, but that was the thought process at the time. So Chinese laborers built the road to go up there. This crew here, they're going to hand hew all those logs from local timber on Mount Hood to build a 3,500 square foot hotel. And you know what? They're going to do it in about 6 months. Because they're going to open this up in August. That's pretty fast. But they have good construction workers, and when you don't put a foundation under the building, you don't have to worry about too much. Okay? Cloud Cap did not have a foundation. It was built on rock at 6,000 feet on Mount Hood. Opens in August. And there's what it would have looked like. Notice there's little cables coming off there and things. Keep that in mind for later on in the talk. It had a nice catwalk up top. Okay. Remember, you have hot baths, you have flushing toilets. The water comes from Tilly Jane Creek via piping that gravity feeds the water. That's what that area looks like today. No catwalk. It's kind of a safety issue.
So that's not the side you see when you go up to the backside?
Yeah. When you first drive up to it, you'll see that front entrance.
Yeah.
Okay. It only takes 6 to 8 hours to get up there by wagon on a road that hits 22% grade. Okay? Keep in mind, these people have a piano up there too. That kind of reminds me of that Laurel and Hardy skit where they're trying to move the piano up the stairwell. They moved the piano up there via wagon. And he got to ride in one of these nice open coaches. Now, for us, that would probably beat our bodies up pretty bad these days. But keep in mind, these people aren't out of the wagon era yet by far. That won't happen for many more years to come. These are descendants, or even people were still coming across by wagon as late as the early 1900s. So we're not out of the wagon era. That's acceptable transportation. They probably crossed worse if they came by wagon train. So going up at 22% grade to a 4-star hotel, what the heck? Here's what some of the route looked like. And there they are when they reach it. That's the front cloud cap. There's nice big doors. Nice place awaiting you once you arrive. $18.90. We got issues. Serious ones if you're a businessman. If you only have 88 visitors for the season, your profit margin is not going to be that good because it's operated by Mr. and Mrs. Adams, and these people are stopping at different places on the way up. They're getting special meals and everything. But you only have 88 visitors your first or second season. Mr. Ladd and Mr. Wood are thinking otherwise on what should be done. So they're thinking of closing it down. If they would have closed Cloud Cap at that period, most likely nobody would have taken up the charge to reopen it. It wasn't a profitable thing to do. So, what are they going to do? They're going to go into the golden years of 1891 to about 1907, and they're going to hire a woman. A woman will save Cloud Cap from its demise. Give yourselves a hand, ladies. This is Sarah Langell. Her husband, James Langell, helped build it. He was a foreman. Her sons, Will and Duke, will help run it with her. She'll do it for about 17 years successfully. I love these fonts. It's driving me crazy.
What's her name again?
Sarah Langell, or Langell. Descendants of these folks that I talked about are all throughout Portland and Oregon. Okay?
Did she own it?
No, she managed it.
Or
Mr. Wood and Mr. Ladd. Okay, they hired her on as manager. What she'll do is simplify everything. They'll take over the stages. The stages won't make a lot of stops. They'll only make one. They'll have lunch. They'll get up the mountain to within 3/4 of a mile of Mount Hood or Cloud Cap, and they'll stop and change horses. The horses couldn't make it the rest of the way over that 22% grade, so they were exhausted by the time they got within 3/4 of a mile. There is Sarah in the front area of Cloud Cap. It's changed a lot. But back then, hey, this is state of the art. Remember what I said? Flushing toilet, hot water, things that most people in America don't have yet in 1889. If you look up at the beam right along there, you'll see some white things. Does anybody know what those are?
business cards.
All right, this man knows his stuff. Those are business cards. And if you made it to the top of Mount Hood, because climbing was one of the big things to do, you got to put your business card up there. How do you think they did it?
Climb.
I get that on my tours. People say pogo sticks, they climb, they use trampoline, ladder.
Shopping.
A silver dollar And on my tours, I pass one around. It's a Morgan dollar, and it weighs a lot. If you took what they call a silver dollar today, it wouldn't work very well. They put a tack in the card, put the silver dollar on it, and feed it upward, and it sticks, hopefully. I don't do it for the public because I would get hurt. That thing would come back down and hit me or one of the members of the tours. So this is how elaborate it was. The building has 8 rooms. It held about 30 guests or so, and it had 4 cabins on the outside, which no longer exist. There's the interior today. Lots changed. If you look in this area right here, this opening, that was probably made by the CCC when they were up in the area in the 30s. So the building and the stove, or the fireplace here has changed immensely also. Okay, ladies, this is what you do up at Cloud Cap when you get there. You lay around and read books. Even, ladies, take a look at how they're dressed, okay? Because it isn't going to change even when they put their efforts into climbing Mount Hood. Women were not allowed to show their ankles, okay? That wasn't Victorian etiquette. There's where they would have been sitting now. That's the dining room. Sarah had it set up really nice. There was a nice fireplace there. And this is the dining room today. Fireplace is missing. We'll talk about that a little later. Things to do. Can we go back on that, or is there a reverse? Okay.
If you arrows, if you use it downward arrows, I think.
There we go. All right, ladies. You've got sticks. You got guides like Will Langell and Doug Langell to guide you up to the mountain. And how are you dressed? They also have something else to keep the sun off. That's how that area looks like right now. That's where they were standing. There you go. Lead all those people to the top of Mount Hood. You're dressed in high boots. You have dresses on.
Big hats. Wasn't there wind up there?
Big hats. There could be. There's no telling. But you know what? On all of these climbs to the top of Mount Hood, they did not lose anybody. They were guided. What's
Did
that?
they have like a hiking boot or were they slippery, so leather
Hobnail
sweaters?
boots at best. But they had a guide rope that was laid out. There's still pieces of the hold down, tie downs up there on Mount Hood that they used. Put those guide ropes in. Keep in mind, ladies, you know, you wouldn't be wearing pants or tops like that. You'd be relatively scandalous. In talking with people who study the era, the dress also helped you out in other ways on Mount Hood. Because once you get about 6,000 feet, the trees disappear. All right? Now, are you willing to show anything beyond the ankle to a leering man? Okay, in the Victorian era? No. That's going to be your modesty curtain. Pretty good, huh? Okay, here's what you're going to look like by the time you get to the top.
Wow.
All Everybody's got lamp black on their face or a Vaseline charcoal mixture to keep their fair skin from burning up. So, yeah, people had good times up there. It was an adventure. Okay, 1894. Remember I said these folks had plumbing? They had flush toilets, probably hot water, all the amenities. They also, in 1894, put in what was considered modern communications. Now, most people in the United States in 1894 did not own one of these. What do you think it was? Telephone. Exactly. They'll have that lovely phone up there. 6,000 feet on Mount Hood in the wilderness with a line going down the Hood River, so people that stayed up there can talk to their friends and brag about how beautiful it is. That's not the actual phone, but it's a representation of what somebody looks like when they're on the phone back then. That is circa 1894 right there. And it wasn't too private from what I gather. Anybody could listen in on you. I like cell phones today. Anybody recognize him? Malcolm Moody. He's one of the first people to visit Cloud Cap on August 6, 1889, with his entourage. He loved it up there. And Malcolm Moody is going to be what, mayor of the Dallas? What's that? He's an assemblyman too, right, for the second district?
Well, his father was governor. Zenas
Right.
Moody was governor, and I think it was Zenas Moody that was the mayor.
Mhm. Yeah, so he's going to be a local politician. He hangs out with the Lane sisters, am I correct?
Yes,
And he owned the Rorick House.
yes.
Okay, so,
In that photo you had of the reclining women, that was the Lane sisters.
Yeah.
photo.
yep. So, he'll go up there several times. He was kind of frightened when he bragged about it, but it still didn't bring more people up there. So, it was hard getting that building started. So that's Malcolm Moody. These are some of the famous individuals that showed up there. Anybody know this man? He's a famous Western artist. That's Alfred Bierstadt. Okay, he's got some of his paintings located at the Discovery Center over here. One of his contemporaries did some of the paintings at the Baldwin Saloon. They were of the same make of type artists. So he stayed up there. He was in his later years by the time he got to Cloud Cap. Next individual, this is Fred Kaiser. He's a famous photographer. He'll later on make motion pictures, travel guide type things. He worked for the Great Northern Railroad, taking photos for them. He worked down at Crater Lake. He's photographed Oregon and Washington, Pacific Northwest. He'll visit Cloud Cap and he'll go up and make a film called The Crystal Ascension. If anybody finds a copy of that, please let us know because it's disappeared off the face of the earth. But we would like to see a film from Cloud Cap from 1919. What's that?
Oh, Lord, yes.
Yeah. So, but from what I gather, the film has disappeared because of not so much they lost it, but putting things on nitrate film back then kind of rots away. Becomes real hazardous. So that's Fred Kaiser, another fine visitor. This person's kind of eccentric. He is a baseball player in the 1890s. That's Billy Sunday. He's an evangelist, a famous one for the era. He lived in the Hood River Valley. He also visited Cloud Cap. So we've got a pretty worldly group of people that visited there.
Great quote from him is, going to church doesn't make you Christian any more than going to the garage makes you do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that sounds like something he would say. Let's see what date we're coming into. Okay, 1907. Something else is going to happen. Cloud Cap, this is the last year of Sarah Langell. Okay? And the world's transitioning fast. By this time, we have airplanes flying. Wright brothers made it into the air by 1903. 1907, a man named William Covey from Portland is going to drive up the Cloud Cap. Okay, that there is a 1907 Cadillac Runabout. It's got one cylinder, 10 horsepower. It makes it over a 22% grade to make it the Cloud Cap. William Covey's pretty proud of that. Except he had one problem on his way back. Anybody from the Hood River Valley or has friends, family that runs farms or anything? Okay, if you're running a farm and you got livestock, the one thing you don't want them is to be spooked. Well, I'm sure a lot of cows and horses never heard a car backfire before. So Mr. Covey on his way back, they threatened him if he ever came back, they were going to hang him. And back then, that was a pretty serious thing. It wasn't a joke. I don't think he ever came back. But he did brag about his automobile. This is the Cadillac Cloud Cap Climber. And according to Mr. Covey, he drove it to 7,000 feet. He went 1,000 feet higher than Cloud Cap, according to this. So you can buy that for a nice little sum of $1,050. I'd like to buy a Cadillac for $1,050. But back then, that was closer to $30,000. Your family, regular folks weren't able to buy that car. But he did name it, everybody say that, Cadillac Cloud Cap Climber really quick. What he did do is it proved that cars can make it up there. And it will, by golly, cut the time. Now only 3 hours instead of 6 to 8. In 1907, Sarah Langell retires. She turns over the hotel to her nephew, Horace Mecklin. And he will drive a famous Pierce Arrow automobile up there. And that will be the stagecoach. Will be a Pierce Arrow. But the Pierce Arrow couldn't do what the little Cadillac could. It can only make it up to the 3/4 mile mark. It makes it up to the stall. Then they change over to horses and go the rest of the way. Apparently, the Pierce Arrow was a much bigger car, and it wasn't going to go over that 22% grade. This is what the parking lot looks like now. There's a modern road there.
Just look at the team in
Yep.
front of it.
New management of the Pierce Arrow, 1907. By 1912, Horace Mecklin is going to be out of the business, and Dorsey Smith will make his appearance. And once in a while, you'll run across pamphlets like this. Cloud Cap in, you can call Dorsey Smith. He also managed the steam company and the railway company coming out of Portland. So he was a businessman. He ran a travel bureau. He owned the hotel. Not too much known about what the hotel was like during that period, but he was still charging, inflation-wise, a pricely sum. He'll do this till about 1919. Everybody still with me? I need to, okay. It's 1919, and a gentleman named Homer Rogers. Anybody know about Homer? Not too many people from the Hood River Valley over here right now, right? Well, Homer, his daughter lives there, Kate McCarthy. She's in her 90s now, but she still goes up to Cloud Cap from time to time. He's going to take over management. Homer will also run the Mount Hood Lodge near Parkdale. He's got 2 businesses. But even with that and Cloud Cap, times are changing. The automobile is going to put a lot of pressure on overnight places. Because now you can drive up to and see the mountain without having to stay the night. Homer's got some other problems with Cloud Cap during his tenure. Let's see, back up. Okay, I mentioned cables earlier. See those? They're there for a reason. Anybody know what those cables are for? Practically hold the whole building down, okay? Because we get 100-mile-an-hour winds, 60-foot snow drifts in the winter. It can play havoc on a building. So Homer owns it. The cables are still in place. Ah, ladies, here's one for you. Look how they're dressed. They're up on that catwalk, and those cables are running between their feet. See those? They got those neat hats made out of newspapers. They were fun back then, too. And this guy is really dapper. I mean, this is pre-World War I here. But anyways, we just want to accentuate the cables. So around 1921 or so, people just kind of dispute when this actually happened. Weather got a little bit much for poor old Cloud Cap. There's what it looked prior to 1920. Here's what Cloud Cap looked like when the storm hit. It decimated the dining area and that nice chimney and the nice fireplace. So Homer's got a lot of problems, a lot on his plate. Kate, by the way, still drives her Subaru up to Cloud Cap. I got younger people that are afraid to even go up that road. There's what it looked like after. It's pretty much what it looks like today. There it is. So this whole area is gone. Nice. It was destroyed when they replaced it. They did not build that chimney back up there. Chimneys had to be quite tall because of the pitch of the roof. It's quite steep. Okay, 1925. It's going to kind of end Homer Rogers' ownership of Cloud Cap. Again, things are happening that we don't have control over. The automobile, the new road that's going around Mount Hood, the Mount Hood Highway, okay? There's a new road that will be built up to Cloud Cap, and Homer is basically told you got to make improvements on the building. Well, Homer's barely making both of those ends work, little above making improvements on Cloud Cap at the expectations of the Forest Service and business people around the area. So Homer sells out. He's going to sell it to a Mr. Ainsworth. And Mr. Ainsworth has big ideas for Cloud Cap. Phenomenal ideas for this side of the mountain. But that's nothing new to Mount Hood. Everybody's had dreams and visions. Cloud Cap itself was a dream and a vision. It's a 4-star hotel, 6,000 feet, to a population that largely is still dispersed in the west, with the exception of Portland and the Dalles and Hood River. So, nothing new. Everybody's got big ideas and dreams, and those dreams date way back. One of them was to put a searchlight on top of Mount Hood that can be seen all the way to Portland. And in reading this big project for the exposition, not only did they want to put a spotlight up there to be seen from Portland, but also a statue of Lewis and Clark. On Mount Hood, the power would probably be generated from Cloud Cap. So big dreams, they're always there. So in 1925, Homer Rogers wasn't going to be able to make it. Mr. Ainsworth and some other businessmen from Portland came along and decided, we'll make it a big place, a spectacular place. Something everybody dreams about, a giant hotel. Right where Cloud Cap is at. That would be the new Cloud Cap Inn. Okay? This one's got about 5 or 6 stories on it.
When is this from?
This is 1925. These are actual diagrams of what they think it should look like. Okay? Here's another one. Isn't that something?
Wow.
Yeah. They were going to make this side of the mountain a very big tourist mecca. And to top it all off, let's see here. Ah, yeah, a tramway going from Cloud Cap to the top of Mount Hood. Wow. All this was to be done by 1930 or so. You're going to put a tramway. There's a problem. We live on a volcano. Okay? I don't think I would want to be up there when 100-mile-an-hour winds strike up, or the soil gives way. But that was their dream. Fortunately, there were people that protested it, like the Mazamas, local people. And then 1929 comes around October, so anybody remember what happened then?
Right.
Yeah. What does that do to investment? Yeah, it stops it basically dead in tracks, which is kind of good for us, but not so much for Cloud Cap. It's going to continue on. 1930 to 1946, several people are going to operate it and own it. Time is passing for Cloud Cap. Dorsey Smith will own it. Mr. Tyrell, 1932, the inn was empty. Dorsey Smith has it for a few years. Boyd French will own it. By 1942, the Forest Service, we get to purchase it back for $2,000. That's a bargain, isn't it? $2,000 and the government gets a hotel. But by 1946, it's pretty much closed up as a hotel. The war takes its toll. We have a building. We have several buildings in the Forest Service. Money is gone. The nation's trying to rebuild itself industrially. What are we going to do with Cloud Cap? By the way, Cloud Cap by this time, after 1946, people are going to use it for firewood. They're going to break the windows. Hunters are going to use the rooms to gut their deer. It's no longer a 4-star hotel. So what do you think Uncle Sam wants to do with it?
Tear it down.
Yeah, we're going to do it in a special way.
Like they do everything else.
Like we do everything else. I like that. We're going to tear it down in a special way that's not conducive with forests. We're going to burn it. Burn it to the ground. But fortunately, that doesn't happen. Because The 1950s will roll around and the Crag Rats want it. Anybody know who the Crag Rats are? Yes, sir.
Rescue.
Yeah,
Volunteer.
they're the oldest volunteer mountain rescue group in the United States. The Cloud Cap happens to be the oldest commercial alpine lodge in the United States. Like I said, it predates timberline by about 50 years. They hear that Cloud Cap is going to be torn down. So they are going to intervene. Mace Baldwin, Percy Buckland. Those are the early Crag Rats. Anybody know how they got their name? Actually, Crag Rats comes from these guys going around, hiking around up on the mountain in the crags. And one of the wives said, "You're all just a bunch of Crag Rats." Therefore, it's stuck. Here's what they looked like back then. This is the 1954 group. They'd already been around since the 20s. What's that?
A lot of familiar names there.
Yes.
Notice the Finnish names in there, the Ellas and Kukaris and such.
Yeah, they're all prominent. I see Beth Yukari every day. Her uncle and father were part of the Crag Rats. Mr. Wells, Bernie Wells now runs a architect business.
Shepherd, Marsh.
So,
Is that Baldwin, is that the same family here?
so lots of people there that may be recognizable, at least the names are. Okay. Here's what the group looks like now. Don't have all their names under them, but there's a lot of young people in there too.
Same shirt.
Yes, no cat.
Yeah, same shirt.
Yeah, two of them.
Nice one.
Okay. Now, when they were in it, that's the Crag Rats. Kind of cold up there. And they're going to restore the building through grant money, just a lot of blood, sweat, equity into it. So they're going to save it. This is what that portion looks like now. Okay. We're kind of taking a tour through the building here from the old days and modern time. There they are eating.
See a bottle on the table.
That's what their kitchen area looks like now. A lot of things done to it probably don't meet SHPO standards, but the rules of the game are a little bit different than they are now. So Crag Rats again in the 1950s. Here's what the area looks like now. Walls have been cleaned up, a lot of replacements. We've even got Crag Rats, Bernie Wells' company, put a foundation under the building, which helps keep it up. Because log buildings are very hard to upkeep, even worse when you don't have a foundation underneath. And you got 100-mile-an-hour winds, 60-foot snowdrift.
Do you get rats or mice in there at all?
Yeah, they live there too. Okay, so it'll make the National Historic Sites Registry in 1974. In 2008, we had a fire. It's called the Gnarl Fire. 2006, we had the Mountain Hood Complex Fire. We wrapped the cloud cap in special mylar for that one, but the fire never got close to the cloud cap. Well, the Gnarl was quite different. It was ready to destroy the entire historic district, which included the A-frame, the guard station and some other areas, including cloud cap and the snowshoe cabin. And it is well on its way. That's from my office. So we always get a front side view when there's a fire on Mount Hood. Okay. So the fire is going to rage. It's going to burn out some old stuff. It's renewing itself pretty well up there now. New growth and everything. And it's going to get real close to cloud cap. All right. This is what remains of the corral that was 3/4 of a mile away from cloud cap. This is prior to 2008. When the fire came through, that is the only structure that was destroyed. We lost the corral. But there were some benefits to that. I'll show those in a second. This is our archaeologist, Mike Dryden, after the fire. But see that road there? That's not the road you drive up. That's the old wagon road from the 1800s. It kind of opened it up. You could drive around up there and not see it at all, but after the fire, it was pretty clear where that road went. Now, we didn't have much time to save cloud cap or the snowshoe club. We called in a retardant strike. So we dumped orange retardant all over cloud cap, which brings it to look like a Howard Johnson's. They turned it orange. It worked. We saved the buildings without having to wrap them. But to give you an idea how close we were to losing it, those are scorch marks on the deck. Embers were going everywhere. That there is fire is burning, that's cloud cap, and it's nice shingled roof right there. Not too much of a fire break if the winds are blowing. Okay, before I go into this slide, let's go back to the fire.
Did it affect Tilly Jane?
No. What was unusual is we thought we lost the whole area. Tilly Jane A-frame, the guard station, the American Legion area. We thought we lost all of it because there was so much smoke. But Tilly Jane did not get touched. All the forest is still around it. The fire burned around it. Don't know why, but we lucked out. You notice in the picture that it's all orange. Fire retardant, modern chemicals. What to do about it? Because cloud cap is not orange anymore. We took something that has been making our lives easier for about 500 years. Chinese probably date even further back with this chemical. It's a simple salt. And it had its own TV show, Western show in the 60s. Anybody know what? Borax. 20 mule team borax. Lots of boxes of that and a lot of elbow grease, and we scrubbed the cloud cap off. So, yeah, I like that Valley Days. Okay. Who said what?
I've been there.
Yeah, I worked there for a year in Cloud Cap. You probably went down to Furnace Creek and all those good places. Scotty's Castle. Very interesting place, Death Valley, if you ever get the opportunity. So if you weren't able to get a room, you could stay at these cabins. This is just outside the hotel. But these cabins were not the last. Longer than Cloud Cap, they're no longer there. This was taken probably around 1920. Notice, ladies, your ankles are showing, you're wearing pants. By this time, life's changing, and so is Cloud Cap. These are all cracks, and these are stuffed with rags and everything to keep the cold air out. Cables that hold the buildings down. I think these pretty much fell down on their own. The only thing that exists in these cabins up there now are the cables. In the rooms, if you get a chance to go on a tour, you'll see names inscribed like Wesley Ladd. They're still here today. They're ancient graffiti. They date back prior to 1900. People wrote their names on the walls, wrote where they were from, and if they climbed to the top or not. Do not do this if you're in a Marriott, okay? Because they will make you clean the walls. That sort of thing. So Wesley Ladd is one of the Ladd boys, William and Ladd's son. Sarah Langell is looking out over Mount Hood. Her ashes are spread around Elliott Glacier right there. She dies around 1922, visiting friends here in Hood River. She lived in Portland for many years. Her sons went on to become foresters and workers for the U.S. Geologic Survey. This is what that area looks like today. We're losing our glaciers at an alarming rate. Notice none of the fancy rocks around or anything like that. It's withering with time, but I think it'll last another 100 years. Okay, despite the PowerPoint changing the fonts, you folks have been a really good audience, and thank you very much. I am open for questions and comments. Any thoughts?
Are there any plans for the future use of that facility?
The Crag Rats are on a 100-year permit, so their future use is to use it as their clubhouse, point of operations, things like that. So,
It's open some times of the year, isn't it?
yeah, I open it up. I'm allowed to open it up in the summer on Sundays, usually starting July 4th weekend. I give 2 tours during the day with about 12 people each, because this hotel is not big. So I keep the group down to a minimum. And we go through and we look at the different areas and how the place has evolved and how it almost didn't evolve, things like that. So that, and if you're up there and the Crag Rats are up there, they'll be glad to take you through the building. You can get up there during the summer months. Yes, ma'am?
What's the difference between the Mazamas and the Crag Rats?
The Mazamas are more of a recreational climbing group. You can join that club at any time, basically. Whereas the Crag Rats, you have to be living in Hood River Valley. You have to have climbed the mountain so many times. You've got to be kind of brought into the group. You got to be trusted, because they do mountain rescue. You don't do mountain rescue with people you don't trust. Yes, ma'am.
The Mazamas are a little more serious than that. To join the Mazamas, you have to climb one of the glaciated peaks in Oregon. I mean, they
Yeah.
really are. Everybody's a climber,
Yeah,
of sorts, recreation.
yeah.
Did they do search
You
and
just don't
rescue
sign
too?
up.
They don't, we have like 3 search and rescue groups on Mount Hood, and we kind of divide the territory up into east and west, and they'll coordinate with each other. It doesn't mean Mazama members can't be members of the search and rescue groups, but that's not their primary goal. Preservation is a big deal for the Mazamans. They got involved when they wanted to put the tramway to the top of Mount Hood. They didn't like that idea. Keep in mind, we have the most pristine side of the mountain over here, so you guys can really relish that. It's pretty spot. Anybody else?
You look, see it pretty good, you just try it.
Yeah. In the early years, when it was hotel, was it just seasonal that was open, or?
Yeah, they tried to keep it open. They took people up there in the winter till about 1894. Then it was determined it wasn't too safe to do that. Probably didn't get too many visitors that wanted to do that, but they tried it. But after that, it became a seasonal thing from about probably late June, July until October. And yes, ma'am.
Is the road pretty good up there?
The road is now that goes up there, the one that was put in 1925, because after the Gnarl Fire, we had to kind of level things out a bit. I don't recommend anything smaller than like a Subaru, but people have taken Toyota Priuses up there. I don't know how they do it, but they do it.
We,
Yes, ma'am.
There's one picture, a couple pictures back where the two women are sitting by one of the cabins there.
Uh-huh.
Are there names on this? Because that one, the heavier lady looks just like my great-grandmother, who was, she used to not be part of that, not work all the time.
What was her name?
Her name was Alice Wickers.
Yeah.
She would have been Cooley then, because she wasn't married.
Right. Some of these photos have been basically, the Lang sisters took a lot. Some of them ended up on these postcards and stuff. But unless you can say who it is, and because they did write a lot of stuff on the back, we get photos like that. I had a lady who came up to me on a tour and stated, "I've got something to show you." She had her mother with her. Well, she pulls out this picture of her mother sitting in front of Cloud Gap in 1949. And I was like, whoa, this is really cool. So I get people that come up that have been there in the middle years. I had a gentleman that visited there in the 40s, and he came in and says, this wasn't there, that wasn't there. I'm like, well, the building's just evolved.